going to give you the first point. All right, and then from this point, everything else will hang from this one point. All right? Faith fact number one that we need to understand is that God is always at work. All right? God is always at work. He's at work around us. He's at work in our life. Sometimes we think that God has checked out or that He's not doing anything. And even as a pastor, when I talk to other pastors and they tell me, what God's doing in their church, and last Sunday, 15 people, we baptized 15 people, or 10 people joined the church, or the other day our evangelism team went out and 20 people came to know the Lord. And sometimes, as pastors, we get a little jealous or envious, and we're like, well, why isn't God working like that here? God's working there, and that's just one illustration. We could do that in our family. We say, well, God's working in somebody else's family. Why isn't God working in my family? Or, God's working in somebody else's career. I mean, we read of how God's, using somebody in their job and, just really expanding and growing them. And it's very obvious. You can see the hand of God in their life and in their career. And we say, well, what's wrong with me? Why isn't God doing that for me? Why isn't God working in my life? So we need to understand right from the beginning that God is always at work around us. He's always at work around us. Now, it's not that God is not working. Please understand me. It's not that God is not working. It's the fact that we fail to recognize His activity. We fail to have the eyesight. We fail to see the hand of God. We allow a lot of things to distract our attention or to keep us from seeing God's activity. Some things, I was thinking about, what are some things that keep us from seeing God's activity? Well, one is doubt. When we doubt God, or we doubt that God is able, or we doubt the power of God, or we doubt the presence of God, or we doubt the peace of God, we start to doubt God. We start to doubt who He is. When we start to doubt God, we fail to recognize His activity in our situation or in our life. Another thing is disbelief. When we just disbelieve that God can do anything. Sometimes we're blinded to the activity of God because of disobedience. We become very stagnant in our walk with the Lord, or we become very disobedient in what God calls us to do, and we limit the power of God. We limit what He wants to do because of our disobedience. I think about the children of Israel who tested God. They were disobedient to God, and many times they failed to see the movement of God. They failed to see the hand of God. Many times people are blinded. They fail to see the activity of God because of religion. We need to understand that God is relational. He desires to have a relationship with us. But sometimes we allow the dogma of religion, and we say, well, God is like this, and this is the only way that God works. A, B, C. We're very lineal in our theology of this is how God works. And we put God in a box, and we say, well, if God is going to do something, He does it just like this. Well, I have news for you. If you study the Scriptures, we see that God works in very mysterious ways and very diverse ways. And the point I want to make here is because if God only did it one way, all right, then every single, you would have God speaking through many bushes. All right, how many times did God speak through a bush? One time, right? All right. Well, you say, okay, well that was Moses. Then you say, well, all right, how about who was the king? Not Nebuchadnezzar, but shortly after him, the handwriting on the wall. God spoke the handwriting on the wall. Well, if that's the case, if God only does it one way, then the only way that God would communicate, or the only way we would see God, is through the handwriting on the wall. All right. Well, what about Balaam? Remember Balaam? God spoke to him how? Through a donkey, right? So if God's, again, if we're going to just limit God and limit His activity, then we would say, well, God only speaks through donkeys. Right? And some of you say, amen, He's doing that right now, right? But you have to understand, so I need us to understand that we cannot, sometimes our religion, right, our theology, we say, well, God only does it this way, and anything outside of this box, isn't God. And as a result of our own limited vision, we restrain and we fail to recognize the activity of God around us. So we need to understand that. Helen Keller was once asked what was worse than being blind. And she responded, to be born with sight and have no vision. All right? Now you think about that for a second, because there are a lot of people who claim to see God, who claim to know God, but they don't see Him. They don't know Him. And I think that is a travesty. That's a shame. Because as God's people, God invites us into a relationship. He invites us into a relationship. He invites us to know Him and to see His mighty hand at work. So fact number one,